A game set in the distant past during an important historical setting. A wide open world to explore, sometimes on horseback, littered with side missions and collectibles to find. The freedom to engage in combat head-on with powerful attacks, or to approach scenarios more stealthily. Discover resources to upgrade your equipment, trail your targets from the shadows, survey enemy encampments before liberating them, climb tall towers to activate new areas of the map. These descriptors could easily be attributed to a new Assassin's Creed game, but they are just as aptly applied to Ghost of Tsushima, and it rocks. Set in the late 13th century on the very real island of Tsushima, the player wields the blade of Jin Sakai, a samurai that leads the island by his uncle, Lord Shimura's side. The game opens with the two suffering a massive defeat at the hands of Khotan Khan, a young leader of the Mongol army with something to prove. Lord Shimura is taken as his captive, and it is up to Jin to recruit allies across Tsushima to free him and ultimately save the island before Khotan Khan digs in too deep and uses Tsushima as his base to invade mainland Japan. All his life, Jin has been taught to fight with honor, but his path to rescue Tsushima presents him with alternate methods of attack, ones that betray the samurai code but ultimately get the job done. It is his reluctance to become the titular ghost that forms the compelling emotional center of the narrative. The supporting characters around him all have different opinions on the matter, pulling Jin's conscience in a myriad of different directions. At times, he is also presented with moments that show him the darkness straying down the wrong path can bring. It's a familiar tale to anyone that is a fan of classical Japanese cinema and stories surrounding samurai. The great cast of fictional characters brings a new dimension to the storytelling, many of which have their own questlines for Jin, further connecting them to the player. Enveloping Ghost of Tsushima in that genre is the Kurosawa mode, a primarily visual filter named after the legendary director Akira Kurosawa. Whilst early Western films were more of a grayscale, Kurosawa's work has high contrast, stark black and white with a healthy amount of film grain. It is a distinct look, providing a compelling and unique method for playing the game. And whilst there is an extraordinary beauty to the filter, it unfortunately robs the game of its incredibly gorgeous and vivid color. Ghost of Tsushima is moment to moment one of the most visually stunning games I have ever played, one that takes full advantage of the color spectrum and is begging to be experienced on a 4K screen that supports high dynamic range. PlayStation has set the standard for visual fidelity on console with a lot of its exclusives, especially with the recent The Last of Us Part 2. Ghost of Tsushima might lack some of the polish that game revels in, particularly when it comes to textures and character animations, but it more than makes up for it with its overall design. The way both sun and moonlight are caught by tall grass, or how the mist will set into a thick forest. Sunrise exploration and midnight combat are both equally as jaw-dropping. And these moments can be captured in a photo mode that takes in-game photography to the next level, allowing for movement, added particle effects, and other visual tweaks. The world is further fleshed out with exquisite details, such as Jin running his fingers through reeds, his outfit drenched in mud after a scrap in the wetlands, or the ashes of still burning buildings, reminding the player of the ever-present conflict. Audio design is excellent as well, both the music and the sounds of animals, weapons, and the wind. Speaking of the wind, it will be your primary tool of navigating the very large and intricately explorable island of Tsushima. Mark a location on your map, and when you back out, a gust of wind will point you in the correct direction. Get lost? Simply swipe up on the trackpad and a new guiding wind will stir up, pointing you back on track. It is an elegant solution that removes the need for a clunky and distracting minimap, and allows the player to remain focused on the task at hand. If you wish to get distracted, golden birds will appear to lead you to undiscovered locations, such as hot springs to increase your resolve and health, or spots to form a haiku and unlock new headgear. These interactions, as well as conversations you have with other characters, allow for a little bit of branching dialogue. Whilst in a hot spring, Jin can choose to reflect on what's on his mind, and haikus allow you to pick from one of 3 options for each line of the poem. These choices have little effect on the very thoughtful and linear story, but they do allow for Jin's tale to feel more personal. In addition, the players can fully customize Jin's appearance and equipment. Different swords and sheaths, new armor that can be dyed different colors, each of which provide different statistical advantages toward combat or exploration. The designs here are just as strong as the design choices in the rest of the game, and the overworld map will let you know when a village or encampment has new upgrades or items to offer, as well as what rewards are tied with completing different missions. There are too many different side activities, collectibles, and upgradable gameplay elements to mention here, but the clean game menus allow for the player to keep easy tabs on it all, and prevent them from feeling overwhelmed by all the options. Almost all of these components in some way aid Jin in combat against his foes, another strong aspect of Ghost of Tsushima. Fighting is well balanced, not as simple as a hack and slash, but not nearly as punishing as a game like Sekiro. Players must replenish Jin's health by using his resolve, which in turn is replenished by successful combat encounters. Resolve can also be used to enact near-fatal attacks, acquired by completing mythic tales that speak of legendary warriors, the authors of these moves. Whilst managing his resolve, Jin must also adapt and apply different stances, depending on the enemy he is facing. The stone stance is most effective against sword wielders, whilst the water stance must be used to effectively break through a shield bearer's defense. Multiple enemies may attack at once, and mastery of Jin's combat relies heavily on the player's ability to juggle the different stances. Rounding out Jin's arsenal is a bow, throwable kunai, and a myriad of different explosives to help distract, disorient, or destroy enemies. And if the player wishes to thin out the herd, they can opt to engage in a standoff with one of their enemies at the opening of an encounter, forced to hold down the triangle button until the foe makes their move. Failure to wait, or falling for the opponent's feint, will result in Jin taking damage and starting the combat scenario with a handicap. Of course, the Ghost of Tsushima is all about Jin's descent into using more devious tactics to get the upper hand. Hiding in tall grass, luring his foes toward or away from him, and stabbing them in the back all become viable options for infiltration. In my personal opinion, these methods aren't as fun as the samurai sword combat, but there's no denying they're sometimes the quicker and cleaner way to handle an encounter. There are multiple skill trees, ones that deal with general attacks, ones that deal with your ghost abilities, ones that deal with the stances individually, etc. You ultimately unlock a multitude of diverse abilities that result in excellent gameplay, only improving over time. The weakest aspect of Tsushima is undoubtedly its parkour traversal, something that does set it apart from the Assassin's Creed games. Walking, running, and riding through Tsushima are all lovely, but it's when you're confronted with a cliff with handholds that things get dicey. I hope this is fixed in time for launch, but I often found Jin scramble onto a ledge, and when I'd use the left stick to maneuver to the next one, he'd simply sit there. There are points when it is maddening. Moving down a cliff face seemed fine, but moving up was consistently a pain. This same issue plagues trying to get down ladders. Going up them is fine, but Jin consistently refused to grab onto a ladder as I approached it trying to head down, unless I got a running start, which sometimes was difficult in cramped areas. One last but kinda big nitpick is looting. Early on, there's a moment before you grab your first supplies when Yuna, the thief that teaches you many of your ghostly abilities, puts Jin's mind at ease by explaining that looting is okay since the owners of the home had more than likely been run out of town or worse, killed. But let me tell you, Jin steals a lot of things from people that haven't been murdered or fled their settlements. I frequently stole wood, linen, iron, and bamboo right in front of people time and time again. It is a video game, so that's just how video games sometimes, but I wish there had been some sort of system that potentially awarded you points for not looting and sticking by your moral compass. Perhaps virtue tokens that meant, okay, you might not get a ton of supplies to upgrade your weapons, but sticking by your morals means that your sword abilities get a boost or something, just something, to further tie the story of Jin's code into the gameplay and make the looting a little less par for the course. Same thing goes for assassinations. You are frequently scolded by the more virtuous characters in the game for your less than scrupulous kills, but there is no gameplay system that incentivizes you to follow one path or the other. It feels a little like a missed opportunity to intrinsically link the narrative and gameplay. Other than that though, I can't praise Ghost of Tsushima enough for being yet another incredible first-party title from Sony and easily sucker punches best game to date. Its combat feels balanced and engaging, its world is beautiful and vast, yet easy to explore, with innovative new navigation tools, and its characters are interesting, telling a tale that only gets stronger as the game progresses. Whilst it may not be the best exclusive on the platform, it feels like a fitting swan song for the PlayStation 4. Thank you everyone that has watched this review. Please consider subscribing to this channel and following myself on Twitch at twitch.tv/GreatBritom. Link in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed The Ghost of Tsushima. I truly, truly did.
Need to make any odds.